Hi guys, how's it going? It's Aldatom Cheki and welcome to my YouTube channel. It's dividends time. We got paid some dividends in the month of January from some of the popular ETFs like your DV ETF, your Signia S&P 500. They did pay some dividends, and we're going to see all of the ETFs that paid me dividends. And it's only ETFs that pay me dividends. I do not have any individual company pay me dividends in the month of Jan. And when I compared how much I received this year to what I received last year, the growth is insane. It's out of this world, right? And this is because at some point I was focused on dividends. I built my holding in the Citrix DV ETF, and it's one of the ETFs that paid me so much. So in this video, we're going to look at how much I have invested, the number of shares I have, and how much my dividend income is for each ETF. So without wasting any more time, let's go into my Easyequities account and see how my portfolio is looking like. If you are using a PC to log into your Easyequities, you will realize that we now have this dashboard that shows you everything about your investments, and I love it so much because it gets to summarize things very nicely and you get to see your progress, even the number of days in which you logged into your account, because we try by all means to not look at our investments all the time. So there you see that active days, they will show you the number of holdings you have, the monthly dividends, and how many dividends you received. So mine says 5 dividends, and that R1.43 there, I am so unsure what it is honestly, but I received dividends from 5 ETFs, and that is the One Invest SA Property ETF, Signia S&P 500, the Citrix Top 40 ETF, and the Citrix DV ETF, and lastly the Citrix Capped All Share, right? So I received dividends from these 5 ETFs. So because I have these ETFs in my tax-free savings account, let's go into my TFSA and just see how it's looking like. My TFSA, guys, is one of the best performing portfolio that I have. It is up 11%, and that is mind-blowing. So let's go into it and see how it's doing and take a look into these ETFs that paid me this amazing dividends. So this is how my portfolio is looking like, and that is how much I have invested, and that is my average portfolio profit or loss. It is up 6.87%, and that is a profit of 7,400, right? So let's go into my TFSA, and in this portfolio I have 71,000 invested, and I am up 11.58%. And the funds to invest, I have R2.73. I think there is a dividend that I got paid, and I did not set it to reinvest automatically into the holding because there's no way that I would just deposit these R2. And also I have maxed out my TFSA, so I cannot make any deposits. So I'm just going to leave this in here. I mean, soon is going to be February and March is going to be here, and I'm going to start contributing to my TFSA because it is the beginning of the tax year and we are not allowed to continue contributing to our TFSA if you had mixed it out. So I'm just going to leave it there until that time comes. And the first holding I have is the One Invest SA Property ETF, and I did receive dividends from this one. This is one of my fighters. I think it has a dividend yield of about 6 or 7%, which is quite fair. It is not too high, it is quite fair. And given the fact that ETFs are already diversified, it is sustainable. The 6 or 7%, it is sustainable. So my current value of my holding is 9,900, and I purchased them at 8,600, and the difference there is the gain, right? And I have 257 number of shares, and the dividends that I have received amounts to R251.37. So I'm gonna have the spreadsheet with the total dividend income I received at the end of the video, so just stay tuned. And this ETF is looking at the dividend yield of these ETFs. This is the second one that pays me the most in dividends. The first one is the Citrix DV ETF, and then followed by this one, and then the rest is this growth ETFs that I have. So the 2 ETFs that I'm banking on for dividends is this ETF and the Citrix DV ETF. So the second ETF that I received dividends from is the Signia S&P 500. So let's check it out. So this one I have 13,000 and 300 invested, and I'm up 18.97%, right? And the past few weeks, this was actually taking a huge knock, and it's because of the whole saga with tech stocks, with what is happening in America. America and China were just, going at each other, well, economically, if I should put it like that, because what happened is we have ChatGPT, right? And we know America to be this big, tech guy. We have Nvidia and these other companies. So they have Open AI, I think it's called Open AI, and that is ChatGPT, right? And China was like, hold my beer, because now I'm entering the chat. China came in and they launched this AI thing called DeepSeek, right? And I actually tried it out, and it works the same way that ChatGPT works. You can just go and try it out. It is free to just create an account and get started with it. So I checked it and I was like, okay, let me just ask this thing something and see how it's going to answer me. And in case of it trying to give you relatable information, I think DeepSeek beats ChatGPT. And obviously, I've just tried it once, but I've put in a question in ChatGPT and put a question in DeepSeek, and I loved what DeepSeek told me, right? This video is not sponsored by China. This is just me giving you a review based on what I found out. So DeepSeek actually just put the entire AI market in the US in the mud, right? And the problem is that if we are going to look at the top 10 holding of this ETF, this S&P 500 ETF, you will see that Nvidia is there at the top. And if that is at the top, if something happens to the tech industry and they lose value, then we expect this ETF to also go down in value. That's what happens, because if now the top 10 holdings are taking a knock, then we're going to see a huge shift in this ETF. So that's what happened. And then with this one, I have only 117 shares, and I received a dividend income of 57 rands and 62 cents. And this is so small, and it's because they only have a dividend yield of, I think, 1 point something percent. It is not more than 2%. Remember that they had the dividend yield, the higher the dividend income. So this being a growth ETF, I do not mind receiving this 57 rands in ETF, right? And I do realize that most people do not understand why they would receive so little in dividends. It's simply because the dividend yield is not so much, or you don't have a lot of money invested. Nobody's robbing you. Investing is not a scam. You just need to go and find out, okay, is this a dividend paying ETF or is this a growth ETF, and how much do I have invested? And to just dwell on this a bit, do not be discouraged when you see that you are only receiving 2 rands, 50 rands in dividends. They get compounded over time. That is why compound interest is the biggest thing in personal finance, because we do understand that if this year you're going to receive 57 rands, then next year you might receive 100 rands, because the dividends that you would have received will keep on being reinvested. That's if you choose to reinvest them in the holding, right? And that's what we recommend all the time, that reinvest your dividends, because if at this point in time you don't need your dividends, you just need to keep on reinvesting them. So this being a growth ETF, I don't mind at all if I have only received a dividends of 57 rands. And the next ETF I received dividends from is the Citrix Top 40 ETF. So from this ETF, I received a dividend income of 23 rands and 93 cents, right? This one also, I think it has a dividend yield of about 2%, and given the fact that it pays dividends 4 times a year, they need to average out that distribution with 4 periods, because they pay dividends 4 times. So I only have 56 shares invested, and like I say, my dividend income was 23 rands and 93 cents. And this also is a growth ETF. It is not a dividend ETF. So I am up 13.37%, which I am happy about. And I did realize something on Citrix Top 40 and the Citrix Kept All Share. And now we are moving into the Kept All Share as one of the ETFs that paid me dividends. And I am going to show you guys what I have realized. And then with the Kept All Share, I have 5,100 invested, and I'm up 13.88%. And this also is a growth ETF. This looks at the entire JSE market. So if you are looking for a well-diversified ETF in South Africa, this is your go-to. So I have received a dividend income of 10 rands and 3 cents, and I have 116 shares, right? So if we look at the 1 year movement of this ETF, let me just click on here, you will see that it is up 19.09%. And this looking at the entire stock market, and also have top 40 that looks at the top 40 largest companies on the JSE. And obviously those companies are the ones that are carrying the stock market, right? So let's go look at the top 40 ETF performance for 1 year. And it is up 18.7% as well. So I was actually having this conversation with someone as to which ETF they need to buy between the Satrix Top 40 ETF and the Capped All Share ETF, right? And I would say for diversification purposes, I would recommend the Satrix Capped All Share. The Top 40 ETF also is a good one because it focuses on the top largest companies in South Africa or on the JSE. So the two ETFs are good, and for the longest time we have had the Satrix Top 40 ETF, and the Capped All Share was not there. So most people were banking on the Satrix Top 40 ETF for great returns, and then now we have the Satrix Capped All Share ETF also that gives good returns, maybe similar returns to the Top 40 ETF. So which one a person can pick between the two, I cannot really advise, but personally I would go for the Satrix Capped All Share because if it gives me the same returns as the top 40 and it is well diversified, if we are talking about mitigating risk and diversification, then the Satrix Capped All Share does it for me. Anyway, let's move on from that. And the next ETF that paid me dividends is the Satrix DV ETF, and let's just quickly check it out. So this is the ETF that I have most of my money in, if we're going to look at them individually. So I have 24,000 invested and it's only up 1.72%. And for reasons that I say all the time, this is a dividend ETF, and I have 9.5 shares, right? And the dividend income that I received from them is 384 rands and 31 cents. And the one thing that I've realized that I did not like is that looking at their annual dividend yield, by the time they declared this dividends was 5%. It was 5%. I'll try to get a screenshot and put it somewhere here. It was 5%. And given the fact that we buy this ETF because of dividends, for it to move from 10% to 5% is absolutely insane. It is insane. I was like, this cannot be. Because to just be honest, nobody is ever prepared for that huge shift, you know, to go from 10% to 5%. That is a huge decrease, right? And another thing with dividend investing, guys, is that we buy these ETFs and individual stocks for dividends because we're looking for stability, right? I want to know that you are going to give me this dividend yield consistently. So if it's 10%, let it continue to be 10%. If it drops to 8%, I can do 8%. But anything beyond that, you are not tampering with my plans, because we plan our cash flow based on the amount of dividends that we're going to receive. If now I know that I am going to expect 1,000 rands in annual dividends and I don't receive it anymore simply because they reduced the dividend yield, you are now, you know, altering my whole life. Actually, you are coming for my income, and that's something that we don't want as dividend investors. The one thing that we need to focus on when we look for dividend ETFs and dividend stocks is the consistency, because we are looking for sustainability, because we are talking about passive income here, and I need to always receive it. I don't need to worry about it. This is the money where you're like, listen, even if I'm asleep or I'm out of the country or I'm wherever, I am going to continue receiving these dividends, and I need them at 10 rands. If last year were 10 rands, even this year I want them at 10 rands. But the DV ETF was at 5% by the time that they declared these dividends. And the DV ETF is the last ETF that paid me dividends. And if we are going to look at the total dividends that I have received, they amount to 77 rands and 26 cents, right? This is too much. Looking at how much I received last year, it has grown so much, right? And all thanks to compound interest and the fact that I continued to invest. Last year I only received 231, and looking at how much I received this year, that is an increment of 400 rands, which is a good thing, right? So I am just so excited by the amount of dividends that I have received. Seeing the growth actually is very much motivating to keep on investing, keep on being consistent, and understand that one day it's going to be way more than this, and it's going to replace most of my bills. And here I have this little chart that shows the growth in dividends. I just like it when I look at it like this and I see a graph and I'm like, oh, okay, I went from this to this, right? It just does something to me and I like it so much. So I have this to just compare how much I received last year and how much I received this year, and the growth is insane. And that's one thing about dividends: the minute you decide that you're going to reinvest them, you will see them growing at a very fast rate, and that's what it takes. Given the fact that investing is a long-term game, you have to reinvest your dividends while you're at it. Do not eat your dividends. Maybe just once a year, go enjoy your dividends, but most of them just try and reinvest, because compound interest will work in your favor all the time. And guys, that's it on how much I received in dividends from my 5 ETFs. And if you don't mind sharing how much you received as well, just comment down below with how much you have received and who paid you. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video.